Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is displacement, where we might have deep emotions and we can't face them because they're too intense. I'm just creating a new background here. Let's see. Wow, transformation. I was wondering why everything was so clear and not jumping in and out. It was because I didn't have my background turned on. Anyway, so displacement is when we have emotions that might be too in this context anyway, we might have emotions that are too intense to deal with directly, and we don't really have the resources to deal with it. So our other than conscious awareness sort of subverts those emotions into a different concern or a different upset. So we're going to talk about that and how maybe to get down to the root cause of whatever those emotional situations are. And should be an interesting conversation, a little bit of an exploration there. And before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, your molecules, your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together and vigorously rub your hands together and feel all that friction, the textures, the pressure, temperature, all that sensation, tickling and tingling when you stop. And allow yourselves to come present into this remarkable physical form with all those sensations that enables you to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So good morning, Bernadette, and good morning, Rosalind. So wonderful to start the day with you. It's voting day, it's election day. Please, please, if you haven't already, please vote. This is one thing we have the ability to do that can theoretically make a difference anyway. So let's talk about displacement. So this was pretty interesting as I was thinking about it. I often look to sessions I've had with clients to come up with points of conversation. And this was very interesting. And I think it's something that we don't look at very often. And that is where we have an upset about one thing and then we express that upset about something else. Even, like, let's say something's going on, you're really upset and somebody didn't take out the trash, for instance, and you get really upset and angry about this person not taking out the trash. When it really, the degree of upset about the taking out of the trash was way out of proportion for the infraction. And what it was channeling the upset from the other thing that you didn't know how to express or you didn't know how to metabolize, and then focus it into something else. Bernadette says, watching the election from north of the border. Well, interesting. I'm sure, I wonder what the perspectives are from north of the border on the election. I'm in different perspectives from different country. I'm sure it feels different than watching it in the US. So it's interesting that the election is taking place on the same day as a full lunar blood moon eclipse, which I think is still going for a few more hours. That has, I'm not an astrology buff by any means, and I don't even understand all the relationships of things with each other. But from what I heard, this is sort of an unveiling of secrets and surprises and disruptions and kind of crumbling of the old, making way for the new. It'll be real interesting to see what happens out of this election. Anyway, please vote. So this displacement of emotions. So someone who's dear to me just Bernadette says, waiting to see which candidate will affect our country. I think it's way more than one candidate. We've got lots of candidates that are going to be that are at play, and I guess we get to see which political party is in power. I don't know. It's crazy town, crazy time. I seriously do not know what to expect. And that's kind of par for the course for these last number of elections, right? Bernadette says human rights need to be in the forefront. Yeah, and it's interesting because we have different ways of interpreting what human rights are. Yeah. It was interesting, or it is interesting to me, that it seems to be polarized, where both sides, both the Republican and Democratic platforms, are both addressing bodily autonomy. So on the one side, it's the right to choose. On the other side, it's the right to choose. So one side where it's the right to choose is the right to choose to have an abortion. And on the other side, it's the right to choose whether or not to have a vaccination. And it was interesting that most people don't equate that both of these issues are issues of sovereignty over our own bodies, right? And it's so strange how each side can be campaigning about the right to control our own physical destiny, right? And yet be opposed on just that issue. It's bizarro world. Anyway, a little bit of social commentary there. So let's look at this displacement thing. So we can what I was speaking with a dear friend who was feeling a lot of complex emotions around work and their accomplishments and decisions they'd made in life, and it was a whole bunch of intense emotions. And it also happened to be the case that they had recently lost a parent. And there are many, many, many complex emotions that we experience when we lose a parent. And it's not necessarily easy to sort through. And some of us try to sort of tough it out. And so those emotions may become displaced or diverted into other concerns that allow us to have the same upset somehow in a way that we might deem more respectable or more socially acceptable somehow. And it was fascinating to me to see that. It was also and in another situation. Well, let me just go back with this displacement of emotions about the death of the parent. When we were able to identify it, when we were able to identify that the upset about the workplace was really more that there was an upset going on around the loss of the parent, this person acknowledged that that was true, that resonated for them, and that it was kind of a mirror or an another way of focusing the same emotions. It was fascinating, really. And then there was another person who was talking about challenges at work and not feeling secure in not having clarity around their role in work and what was expected of them, and finding this to be really frustrating and disorienting. And we were talking for a while, and then I was able to make the connection that this was sort of a habit, not a habit, an environment in which they grew up where there was always uncertainty. And as that uncertainty permeated their whole lives, the response to it ultimately was trying to have things in nicer kind of organized boxes so that they could better comprehend, so they knew what was expected of them, because they grew up in an environment where they didn't know what was expected of them. Like, it didn't matter how well they performed, it was never good enough. And so the rules were always changing. And then here they're in a work environment where they're experiencing something similar. And so the emotions from growing up were kind of displaced into that work environment with more extreme experience of frustration or anger or helplessness, and defiance all at the same time. So really, really interesting to, if somebody's upset with work, then they take it out on the dog, for instance. It's like we deflect and divert and just redirect these emotions in other directions many times. And I'm wondering, one of the really, well, Rosalind says, when I think of displacement, I'm visualizing a container of fluid. Yeah, I know. I was not addressing that, but I agree. And Rosalind says, adding something to the container so the fluid wells up to absorb the added something. Are we adding something to dilute or create waves to distract? Yeah, so when we're doing a displacement of emotion, I think we're looking for a way to process that emotion that may not be completely conscious, right? That is, what I'm talking about is the unconscious displacement of emotion, where I'm feeling upset about one thing and I'm expressing it in another place. And it may be that it just gives us a more ready outlet somehow. But it doesn't get to the root cause, right? Bernadette says, I'm a person that needs clarification of what is expected of me. I find I get really upset when the rules change without notification of reasoning. I would imagine, Bernadette, that that's something that happened a lot when you were growing up, is that the rules changed and you didn't know how to react, how to respond. And that kind of environment creates anxiety. You know, if there are expectations that we can never meet, if the rules are changing all the time, if we never know who our parent is going to be, if they're going to be the nice parent or the angry parent, then we tend to try to compensate for that by keeping the rules, keeping things the same oftentimes because they're predictable, which may make us stay in negative situations longer than we should, because at least we know what we can expect. I mean, years ago, I remember being in a relationship and it was not great. It wasn't dangerous. It wasn't abusive in any way. It just was not a good relationship. And I wasn't happy. And at that time, I actually caught myself saying, well, at least I know what to expect in this relationship. You know, like it's the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. And that's how so many of us have operated in life because of trauma, you know, so that we become subservient, we become submissive, we become willing to accept way less than optimal circumstances because at least we know what to expect, which is really sad in its way, right? And Bernadette says, wasn't able to react because they said so. So talking about being a kid, and it wasn't okay to be angry, right? It wasn't okay to fight back. So we ended up having to suppress ourselves. And this person who had experienced all this upheaval, you know, was taught, hang your head low, don't look up, you know, is all kinds of submissive behaviors. And what builds behind that is anger, resentment, frustration, lack of self-esteem, all these things, which then when we have an experience in life that is reminiscent of some of those triggers, we get plugged in and just sort of reignite the patterns, unless we use that as an opportunity, because these things arise because we have it as an opportunity to feel and heal. Then we can either become reignited or re-triggered, or we can, or not one or the other, we can then use it as an opportunity to heal. So Jenny says, trauma sucks. It alters your life and your brain, and it hurts. Yep, I agree. I agree. And trauma also is something that we can transform and use as a vehicle of our transformation. So if we choose to operate from, and this is a big choice, to operate from a notion that life is happening for me and through me rather than to me, then we can perhaps perceive even our trauma as an essential part of our growth and discovery and of our becoming. So one of the things that I recognize is the depth of the emotional trauma that I experienced allowed me, getting through that allowed me or allows me to be able to be present to others that are experiencing deep emotional pain. It allows me to be able to be there with them because I've experienced it and I've survived it, and I know I've survived it. I know I've gotten to the other side of it. And I've gained a whole lot of tools that have provided me with very useful skills. And Bernadette says, many years of therapy to learn that my opinion matters, I matter, and it's okay to disagree. Yeah, so learning that is a really powerful thing, because you also know what it is to not believe that and to not recognize that your opinion matters and that you matter. And so that gives you some tools to be able to assist others in recognizing their importance as well. And Jenny says, it's why I have BPD, CPTSD, depression, anxiety. Wow, that's a lot of letters. I don't even know. Bipolar disorder I'm guessing is BPD, and CPTSD. I have no idea what that is. Maybe chronic PTSD. Oh, okay. So it's not bipolar disorder, it's borderline personality disorder. Okay, wow. So the good news is that we don't have to, complex PTSD. Gotcha, Jenny. I don't know if you've looked into it, but there's a lot of research now with psychedelics as a powerful therapeutic tool for impacting and healing, in many cases, PTSD and depression and anxiety, microdosing, and also I'm talking about in a therapeutic environment. There's a rise right now in studies around psilocybin, particularly, and yeah, if you look for psychedelic therapy, Jenny, you might find some interesting resources. I think that it's legal therapeutically in a couple states. I'm not sure exactly where. And Bernadette says CBD oil, not with THC. So I've heard some people have had really good effects with CBD. My body doesn't like CBD or THC all that much. But anyway, interesting, there are some very interesting options, and new therapeutic techniques that seem to be effective. And you might even be able to get into a study, Jenny, because there are bunches of studies happening now with PTSD and psychedelics. So maybe look into that. I know Johns Hopkins was doing a study, and a bunch of different organizations. So displacement. If you look, so another version of displacement is when we get upset and eat, for example, or get upset and drink or drug, or it's a way to displace our emotions that we can't deal with directly. And so Jenny says, I think it's definitely better than pharmaceutical drugs. Well, it's interesting because they're now trying to synthesize the psilocybin, the essence of what makes psilocybin, which that's a whole other story, whole other conversation. Anyway, I think that it's important for us to look at what we're experiencing emotionally. And the thing is, it's hard sometimes, and we can't really see ourselves all that well. Sometimes it takes somebody else to be able to reflect back to us. Jenny says, I'm voting for it today for CBD or for psychedelics. I don't know if that's on the docket, and it might be in some states, in which case, there's so much opportunity. Jenny says mushrooms. Yes, mushrooms are so powerful. And in fact, there's a mushroom called lion's mane that is being studied for its impact on Alzheimer's, actually, along with psilocybin. So lion's mane, psilocybin, and niacin are a combination that Paul Stamets has come up with to facilitate a synergy between those different medicines and to impact neurogenesis, which is pretty awesome. Rosalind says, displacement of comfort. Interesting. Wanting to get rid of, instead, we can do what with it? Let's see, wanting to get rid of. Instead, we can do what with it? Turn around and look at the discomfort. Is it there all the time? It may take someone else to help. Exactly. So it can take someone else to help reflect what's going on with us, because this person didn't know that their upset around work was really about their upset about the loss of their parent. And it was really clear that that was the case when we got into just discussing it. But I think that you speaking directly to it, Rosalind, we get to look at the discomfort, because the discomfort is a message. So this was also, I have to go in a second, but another example was another person who was experiencing tremendous back pain previously, and then knee pain. And we communicated with the knee, and the knee was just saying, hey, need to slow down, take better care of yourself, put yourself first, and spend more time reflecting. And as soon as we got that message, the knee pain went away. It went from a 6 to gone. So that's another way that we displace our emotions. And isn't it better to just address the situation head on and avoid all that displacement confusion? Jenny says psychedelics is what the indigenous people use for healing. And Jenny also says trauma stored in the body. Exactly. And if we keep experiencing trauma long enough, it will manifest physically. There's just no doubt. Anyway, that's it for today. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live here on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel at 9 a.m. Eastern each weekday morning. And I invite you to check out the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network, EWN One with the Earth, and Enlightened World Living. And until next time, so much gratitude and appreciation to you, and so much love.